let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaming, feedism, and everything in its orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get it started. Listeners, today we are continuing our series of dinner table talks. We've got a couple of guests here today with us, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves one by one.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Monty. I'm also known as cub2001, and you have probably heard me on weighing in on paid content.
And I'm Eric, otherwise known as Braveheart Lion, and I was on an episode called Entree, Main Discourse, and Dessert.
Well, listen, lads, thank you so much for joining us this episode. I think this is going to be a really fun experience because everyone here kind of represents like a different slice of era. Monty, you're the youngest, you're 21. I'm about 30. Eric, you're approaching your 40s, and Tim, of course, is 1,000. So, we've got
You bitch. Fuck you.
So, we've got
And for the record, I am 38. That is not almost 40.
No, I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 in July.
Yes, 40,000 years, as I said, in the thousands. Thank you, Tim, for clarifying.
Thank you for dusting off my old ass carcass and propping me up once again.
Absolutely. Weekend at Bernie's. Well, she was.
I'll be like Rita Baga, impersonating Edith Piaf. Can someone get my coffin? I want to get the hell out of here.
Shy Sheila is so shy that I don't give a rat's ass. I'm a fucking
Oscar winner.
I don't know why they pay me to do these chicken shit gigs. That was a terrible Cher impression. I'm so sorry. But we're having an intergenerational conversation today. So I think it's going to be great just to kind of see where people are and what people are thinking. So listen, first question out there is, what do you feel, for each of you individually, what are the key events, situations, not necessarily gaming, but just in the world? What are the key events and situations that you feel define the people of your generation or your age group?
I feel like a lot of people in my generation, Generation Z, there are a lot of us who like to complain and then compare and contrast against other generations, whereas 9/11 happened in America when we were being born, and then we had to deal with that trauma from people later on when we were growing up, and then the crash, and then just everything that's gone on. And then a lot of us have also had to have our transformative college years in COVID, unfortunately. So that's kind of kept us locked up and made, unfortunately, a lot of us chronically online, which just means hypersensitivity, just looking at everything in great detail and nitpicking things from people's content or tweets or just whatever, and kind of just trying to find the negative in anybody. But then again, on the other side, we're very driven with political issues, whether that just be race, the economic crisis, or just anything in that kind of genre. So if you're interacting with someone in my generation, usually things will lead to politics, because that's just what we've grown up around, and that's why a lot of us are just so chronically online.
Yeah. So I found out a few months ago that people that are my age, that are born in the early 80s, before 1985, are called geriatric millennials. And I took great offense to that, because if you're going to call me geriatric, I better be getting a Social Security check. But so that would be sort of where, Tim and I are coming from that group. And I mean, we're the ones that we're the last people that remember a time before the internet.
Yeah.
Before, iPhones and things were in your pocket and you could do that. But even before it was in your home, you had to go to the library at school or whatever. And so there's a difference in the amount of information that you have available to you at a particular age. And so there's a longer period of time of self-discovery and feeling like you're the only one that feels this way, and there's something wrong with you. And add the gay thing on top of that. You're juggling a lot, and you don't have that ability to just pop online and Google something and, oh, there's plenty of other people. This is my community here. Here we go. Now we have reaped the benefits of that just like everybody else as it's developed. But I think that really influences kind of our perspective. When you say, Tim?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Coming out, or a lot of people come out earlier, a lot of people, than we did, and things like that too. So
I definitely see that. I feel like what a lot of older generations say, or just like, Gen X or millennials, they have told Gen Z, or just me personally, that they have paved the way. And I don't deny that. Like, there are a lot of people who have done a lot of great work in order for us to come out earlier or feel more accepted. But, I grew up in a very rural place. I was, I think, like the first person to ever come out publicly to a whole school system. And so, that was hard, but I had these kind of mentors that were, in their 30s, some in 40s, that were just family friends, and they really helped me along the way. But looking deep into it, there's not, how do I word this? I feel like they say, older generations say we have it so easy, but that's just not true at all. I mean, maybe people on the West Coast who grew up here, it's way more widely accepted, but you'll still get shit for everything. I mean, coming out, being bigger, or just anything,
I mean, Tim, it might be difficult to cast your mind back that far, but I would have thought the most defining features of your generation would be, crossing the ice bridge from Asia into North America.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. And then the Great Thaw happened, and then the flood, and then, I woke up in a cave I didn't recognize, and I said, well, it's not going to get any better, so I just stuck around.
Strap that saddle on that woolly mammoth.
Do you miss?
No,
your
I was one of the wild bitches. I was riding a pterodactyl.
Tim remembers when that media came down. He went like, well, the one good nightclub is gone. How am I going to get my dick now?
Well, yeah, I grew up in a different, from going back to what Monty was saying, he grew up in a rural area. I grew up in Charlotte, which is a metropolitan area. So it's, there's that as a difference too. I didn't come out till I was in college. Because I was afraid. And just because you're in a metropolitan area doesn't mean that it's safe for you to come out, particularly in a southern state. But it's all geography and generation. Like it's a little bit of both.
Because I grew up smack dab in the middle of the country, I was in Kansas City, and I was outed at 16, and then I just decided not to deny it anymore. And so being the only queer kid that everybody knew about, I mean, I was already targeted because I was a goth, but then to be, a fag on top of it, they were like, oh yeah. But, I never got into any physical altercations, but definitely a shitload of verbal abuse and things being hurled at me.
So to put a bit of a spin on that original question, like what do you think defines your generation? What do you think defines the type of people in your age bracket in the gaming community? What do you think is unique?
I mean, starting off, I know that I said this on the last episode I was in, but I really, when I look at my generation, and especially just like in the gaming community, we're all about inclusion, and we're all about like just talking to everybody and anybody, no matter like race, gender, religion, anything like that. It doesn't matter, because if you're getting fat, we're going to be into it. Like, that's just kind of my motto. And so I've seen a lot of inclusion with my generation, but then again, when I was underage, there's like a whole subsection of it's like a group of underage people who follow each other that are gainers until they turn 18 and then go into the wider world of gaining. And there they learn so much toxic shit, like clicky, just outright rude, excluding people all the time. And so when I turned 18 and started, following people who were of age, now that I am of age and I didn't follow those people anymore, I had to relearn that. And so I feel like, yeah, my generation 18 and up is very inclusive, but 18 and under is also just like still trying to figure shit out.
Well, it sounds like they took gainerism and applied high school to it.
Pretty much.
High school rules.
I mean, that's also just like, gay people
Yeah,
like to
that's
be
true.
cliquey, and we're all trying to like relearn that. Some of us are trying to change that, but it young people see it and they're like, oh, that's what being gay is. I'll have to do that as well.
I feel like there's also like there's far less emphasis on sex with your generation. Like, I don't know if I'm categorizing too much, but like, it seems to me that there's not as much emphasis on like physical sexual connection as there is intellectual, emotional, or some sort of, friendship to start with.
100%. I mean, like, many of the interactions that I've had with people online, I am not just gonna be like, hey, here's a nude, right? I would much rather talk to people, get to know somebody, and if that kind of ends up happening, then that ends up happening. But back to like the original question, when I said everything we talk about, usually it will come up with something political. If you're not like that's like another toxic thing, I think, is my generation 18 and up now, people who are allowed to vote, if we get into a political conversation and you don't like exactly see how we are seeing things, then we're probably not going to want to talk to you. And I sadly have done that in the past. I just grew up with some political trauma in my family, so I kind of wanted to push that away. But I think I'm trying to work on it, and I'm hopefully other people my age are trying to work on it. It's just really hard with like the past couple of years to not be thinking about politics all the time.
I was going to say, I don't know that the politics thing is just unique to your generation, because I think that's I don't want to say it's just an American thing, because there's other countries that are going through other things, but we've definitely had a time of it, and they're just people that if I learn that they are of a particular political persuasion, all this other stuff comes along with that, and that's not necessarily fair or true.
I feel, I mean, American politics in general, just from growing up with it, it's up and down a lot. Like, these past couple of years, it's been up a lot. It's every news story, everything, all the time, everywhere. And then like, in before 2016, it was more so just like, we're easy going. We're kind of just trying to figure some stuff out. But there's definitely ups and downs with the politics type of stuff. And my generation in particular gets very heated. Just with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
Eric, would you agree with me that gainers are around our age? We're more like I feel like we are quieter on the apps. Like, we might not post as much on Instagram or Twitter or even on Grommr, because I mean, by this point we have a lot of stuff we have to do. We have mortgages, careers, bills to pay. Like, so maybe there are times when I see the younger generation just like filling up the news feeds with stuff, and I'm just like, God, if only I had that amount of free time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, but I think that could also just be like I said, we started our journey not on the internet, so it could be a symptom of that. But I think in general we just maybe don't spend as much time on our screens. But
yeah,
the one thing that I was going to say about that was I think a lot of people from our age group remember the big three: fat nats, belly builders, and gainer web. And was there one more?
There was also
beefy frat.
Beefy frat came around, I want to say 2003 or 2004, whereas the others had been around for a little while longer. But I was going to say the Inquirer, that was another one. Then all of the Yahoo groups, the millions and millions of Yahoo
groups. Yep. And then it doesn't really translate over to gainers so much, or it didn't at the time, but bigger city.
Bigger city.
Because there was a bit of a stigma at one time. I don't know. I haven't been on bigger city in better part of.
Are you talking about a stigma against gainers?
Yeah, is there still a stigma?
Yeah, no, that's still there.
They're still,
Okay.
It's still there. They really, they want to make it seem like we're the weirdos, like we're the cousin that you don't want to mention, like.
Yeah, don't get me started on conversations like that. There was
that's just self-loathing,
a Facebook conversation, a post I should say, that I saw where someone was fully like, I love fat men, and in fact I prefer them, but why does gaining scare me? And then lo and behold, like every fucking self-loathing fat boy was posting like, yeah, they only want to make you fatter. That's the only reason they care about you. And I'm like, it's literally not the truth, but go off, sis. Like, think what you want to think. This is a lesson I've had to learn. This is something my generation has had to learn. It's like, do you know what? People are going to do what they're going to do. You have to try and find your groove and like walk around it. If there's one thing I would say that defines my particular generation, like Generation Y, full-fledged millennials, it's like, I do feel like we are the ones who have been shit on the most. Because I think like we were the first generation that came around where news articles started posting shit. Young people are doing this and we don't approve. Young people are failing. Young people are shit. They care about the wrong things. Blibbity, blibbity, blah. And we're also now the age where like people are apparently supposed to still like have children, have careers, get into the conservatism of it all, and it's like, no, this is not the tea or the vibe. It's sort of like we were the generation where we were like, okay, we're trying to be planeteers, we're trying to like get into the grips of doing the good shit, but like we're still queuing up for like old people to die so that we can get an affordable house. So it's just sort of like,
Well, yours is the generation that grew up at the time where the bulk of the baby boomer generation was in the driver's seat.
Yeah. So I feel
it was, my parents are boomers. I don't know, Monty, if your parents are of that age group, but the boomer generation is starting to age out and they're starting to disappear. And things change when that happens. But that's definitely something that I've noticed too.
I think it's to a degree, but certainly I think our generation, I think my generation in particular is sort of like, we're the shell shock soldiers. Like we were sent off to like be dealt a shit hand with things. We were too soon to benefit off of becoming conservatives when that was apparently the in thing to do, and we were too late to be like the Gen Z, Greta Thunberg, like harassing world leaders on Twitter and like getting shit done. So I feel like we are the haggard ones who just sort of like weekly cheer on the Z's, like, yeah, do it for us.
Then what does that make me and Eric?
Well, you said it was geriatric.
Geriatric millennials.
Dust.
And that's gonna be your drag name, sis. Geriatric.
Tim, I get what you're saying, where you guys kind of feel like you're in the background a little bit cheering on us, which is just like kind of like what generations do, though. You work on things a lot, and maybe they're not going to change when you're doing it, but you're leading up for future generations to actually get that change done. So when I look at millennials, like my brother and my sister-in-law, I see them, I'm like, okay, like they're young millennials right now. And I see them and I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys did like a lot of good stuff. You guys, you kind of started the body positivity movement. You're more gay people, making that more acceptably and widely okay, transgender movement and all that good stuff. And then but like after that happened, and then Generation Z started like, getting out, started voting and stuff. My brother started saying, he's like, why are you like so liberal about this stuff? Like, why are you so into it? And I'm like, you were too. And that's why I am how I am today. That's why a lot of Gen Zers are widely just, wanting to get into the political sphere and just like wanting to change stuff, because we saw you guys really trying and, being successful in some parts, and we just want to carry that on. But also, I feel like a great thing about, well, there wasn't like a great thing, but with the Black Lives Matter movements, everybody came out. everybody. It wasn't just Gen Z. I mean, yeah, Gen Z was like really loud. Yeah, but there were still people of all ages coming and supporting. So, I mean, you still got it. You're still here. You can still do the stuff that we're doing.
My name is Jujubee, and I'm still here.
That's what I feel like I'm going to have to start doing pretty soon.
So, but like you said, you watch us as the one of the previous generations that are emulating us. It's funny that you say that because of the AIDS epidemic, there's an entire generation of gay men that disappeared.
Oh yeah.
And so when I was a developing gay, as I've heard it put, there were not very many elder gay people that were guiding the generation before me and Tim. You know, that's the generation right before us is really the ones that are in their 40s and early 50s are the ones that grew up without those people to sort of pave the way for them because they were gone. And so it's almost like we're emulating the generation before us and they're making it up as they go, you know. So it's
and that's why a lot of us turned into a big mess.
Yeah, you know.
You know, and I think that's also something worth reconsidering when it comes to queerness, you know, because when you think about it, expectations on people of a certain age to do certain things, it's all based off expectations of heteronormativity. You are this age, therefore you will go to college to get a good job, to work a good couple of years and develop that career for a bit before you settle down and have children, because you will devote your life to your children. Whereas to be queer people, we're not obliged to have kids, it's not expected for us to have kids, and for a long time we couldn't even get married or have said kids, even if we wanted to. So what do you do with that life? When you have no obligation to have children, therefore there is no obligation to have a well-paying job, therefore there is no obligation to go to college to get said well-paying job, therefore there is no obligation to finish high school to get into college. Like, what do you do with that life when it is not rooted in heteronormativity? And I think we are finally beginning to see outspoken queer individuals of a more established vintage, people who are the generation before Tim and Eric, people who are in their mid to late 40s, early 50s, who have made careers for themselves and are still living fruitful lives filled with friends and traveling and other career opportunities and project work and things that queer people can devote themselves to, when children and marriage is not necessarily like the number one thing to aim for. And of course, it's not saying that you can't have that, but just that there's more to life than what is handed to you by your folks. But to maybe bring the conversation back to gaining a little bit, you know, I would say the thing that defines my generation is probably the first generation that really went for it at a young age. Because I think when I first came into the gaining community when I was Monty's age, I think I saw a lot of people just really throwing themselves at it, gaining a lot of weight really, really quickly. And I think, you know, I could be wrong here, Tim, Eric, the guys in your generation, it was more like people gaining a bit slowly, gaining more over time in a gradual manner, and developing more notoriety in that internet online space because they committed to doing it. Whereas my generation felt like we were the first mass onslaught of, nah, we're going to get fat and we're going to do it. And then a whole bunch of people did that.
And then that very thing that you just talked about, James, is something I think was where Beefy Frat was a landmark, because there were so many young college age gainers that joined that site and like made names for themselves. And if they're still around in the community, they are remembered as being legends by this point.
It started, like, for me, it was in the college years. That age group was when I knew about it beforehand, obviously, you know, but it wasn't something that I could live out in my life until I was out of the house in college, you know, away from my parents and got that freedom. Whereas, you know, the younger generation, a lot of them are still living at home, and, you know, they're going for it, and good for them. I cannot imagine the pressure that puts on you from, you know, your parents put on you. That's still something I struggle with. I've got trauma that I deal with every time I go home for Christmas here coming up. But not having that feeling like you've got that watchful eye on you, it changes. But you know, the younger generation doesn't seem to be bothered by that as much. Or if you're not bothered by it, you deal with it better than we did.
Yeah, you guys don't seem to suffer the guilt that we suffer.
I mean, yeah, I see a lot of people online, especially my age, or like, you know, people who have just recently turned 18 in the past year, who I knew from before I became of age, because I stopped following all underage people once I turned 18, because I was just like, no, thank you. And I see them and like, yeah, they still live at home and they like gained 100 pounds in like 16 months. I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know how I would ever do that. Um, but I also think it's just like, you know, it may be a generational thing about like more body positivity and just less of giving a shit about what people think. But it still depends on just like family dynamics and everything. I mean, uh my brother, he's like 5 years older than me, he never really did sports. Um, if anything, he just like wasn't forced to. And then my parents, of course, were just like, oh, we didn't really do right with the first child, so let's like kind of force all that onto the second child. So I swam competitively for 12 years. I was in a multitude of sports, not limited to like wrestling and triathlon and all that stuff. And so I went to boarding school for my high school years, from sophomore to 12th grade. So I kind of had that freedom. I was like 3 states away. Like I was just like, I can order Uber Eats and I can like eat whatever I want. But then again, I was on a scholarship to swim. And so I was just like, well, shit, I'm getting this really good education because I'm on a scholarship. And then when I was applying to college, I only applied to 3 colleges up here in the Pacific Northwest. And 2 of them were offering scholarships. And I'm like, okay, these are really good schools. I think my parents would be like, yeah, you should do that. And something that just like kind of clicked in my head. And I was like, no, I'm not going to swim anymore. You know, I liked doing it for a while, but I'm fucking done. Like, I hate myself so much, like 2% body fat, 130 pounds. And I was like, I fucking hate myself. And so I came here, and then COVID was kind of just like a blessing in disguise for me, because it was like really just a way for me to eat like shit.
Yeah, I
So
gave everybody the excuse.
yeah, yeah.
You just blame it on COVID, and it's easy to say.
And you know, I still got flack from my parents, but then they're like retired now and they're building a house like 30 minutes north of me now. They moved from Colorado. So now I went to boarding school 3 states away, went to college 4 states away, and now they're here again. And so I still have that very watchful eye on me every single day. And I'm like almost 100 pounds heavier now. And so it's in my brain. I'm just really trying to remember how I didn't give a shit back then, because I started to give more of a shit now. Again, it really just depends on family dynamics.
Well, I can tell you, Monty, the older I have gotten, the less I care what other people think of me. And people would say that when I was your age, and I'm like, I know you feel that way, but that's not really a thing. It really is a thing.
Mm.
Like,
it was so great. Like when I hit 36 and I looked around at my peer group, and then no, actually COVID was really the blessing in disguise for me when it came to this particular part of getting older. Like I went out, I went to one of the bars after lockdown was over. I looked around at my peer group and I'm like, you know what? I don't really like any of you anyway. I was fine at home. Fuck off.
Now, isn't that a goddamn lesson? Like looking at the people around you and going, oh my God, like I could not care less. Like choke and die, like not choke and die. Well, actually, no, yeah, choke and die. Because like, who are you? I don't care. Do you pay my bills? Do you suck my dick? Do you make me feel love? If you do none of those things, then truly, here's a glass of razor blades and gargle, because your opinion means less than zero. It truly means nothing. And just getting into that vibe and that opinion and impression is fabulous, because it frees you up to do so much more with your life. Like, I'm at a point now where I'm not going out of my way to like announce it to everyone that I'm a gator, but truly, like on my holiday back home, I wish a bitch would have come up to me and said, I found your podcast. Oh, about gaining? And what? What's your opinion?
What did you think?
Let me know your thoughts and feelings about that.
What was your favorite episode?
Tell me your favorite. Tell me how much you stroke your dick, finger your clit, and wank yourself to completion over me and my opinions. Tell me here, in front of this church of people. Tell me right now. And if you have nothing to say, then off you fuck. We are by the Indian Ocean. walk in and keep going till you hit Madagascar.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, but something I've noticed is that people who are adjacent to the gainer community or in a relationship with someone who is, but they aren't, are a lot more open and accepting of it. Like there's a lot more people that I know that I'm a gainer that aren't themselves than there used to be, and they have surprised me over and over again when they don't make an issue of it or they don't care.
Yeah.
You know what gave me hope? So James, we were watching this video together. It's a comedian on YouTube. I think his first name is David. He's kind of nerdy looking. He always does like the gay stereotype videos. But in one video, he was talking to a friend about another friend or something like that. And it was like, yeah, but one member of that group was putting on a lot of weight. And the other guy was like, well, yeah, he's a gainer. And then the character said something snippy, and the other guy goes, don't kink shame. And I was like, finally. I mean, that's really all you have to say is don't fucking kink shame. And then if enough people say it, it'll catch on.
There is a really interesting thing in the universe, and I'd like to tell people about it. It's this thing where if you don't like something or you disagree with something, I'm going to tell you this now. This is a hack. This is a life hack, right? You don't have to engage, and you don't have to be an asshole about it. You could actually, here's what you do. Leave it alone and walk away. Like, you can hit block if you feel so visceral that you need to hit block. You could also just choose to ignore it. Like, I love to ignore stupid people now. It's fantastic. I want to make a point to Eric and Tim. I want to ask you guys this specifically. How much easier has gaining been for you as you've sort of stepped more into full-time work?
Well, for me, it hasn't really gotten any easier, but that's more because my body is fighting it. My genetics are just not allowing me to keep weight on as much as I would like. And, I've mentioned in other episodes I have issues with food, but having the money to do so, that definitely helps, because trying to gain on, a paycheck to paycheck situation where you never have more than like $500 in your bank account at a time, that's hard. So, now I can order the Uber Eats every night if I want to. I can buy the calorie dense foods that are more expensive.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's when you're in, like, when I first started, I had a meal card in college, and I was very conscious of what was on that meal card, and I was always surprised how far it went towards the end of the semester. I'd be like, oh, well, then I'd go and go whole hog, not to be no pun intended, but the not having to worry about, I got to make this rent, or I can't buy groceries and things like that, definitely does take the pressure off. But the funny thing about that is the older I've gotten, while it still is something that I experience the desire, I don't necessarily have it quite as intensely as I did when I was younger. Not that I don't want to, it's just it comes in waves now instead of just being a constant thing. And so I have other priorities too. I want to travel, and being too big to fit into a plane seat is not very convenient. So, I mean, there's always balance of everything. I think that's what I sort of talked about on my previous episode. But yeah, definitely not having to worry about that, or being able to, afford the clothes and not having to say, oh, I can't gain anything else because I can't buy clothes right now and I have to have something to wear.
Yeah, finding a balance is definitely interesting in a thing that you're doing that causes transformation that is not invisible to people, something that is very visible and very, very much in the world and in the public eye. Like that part can be difficult, but like I've had desires to gain and grow since my teenage years, and I started when I was first at uni. And it's realizing that all the fantasies are wrong. Like the endless meal card is not endless, and university food is not actually that high in calories. It's just shit made, Whereas learning how to cook good food and add my own calories has been far more beneficial to my gains in terms of food and looking after my mental health. You know, all of this, which has led to things like getting better jobs, training, and actually feeling a bit more secure in the work that I do, you know, to the point now where it's like, I don't even work full-time jobs for the most part. I work random fixed-term contracts, but I still manage my money. I make sure that I'm earning, I make sure that I work enough, I make sure that I do enough, I budget my food, I budget my time and effort, and I still have growth, you know? So I think the journey I've been on through my gaining has kind of taught me that there is no one way to do it, but so long as you find whatever groove is right for you, you'll see the results that you want to see.
Yeah, the gaining community is just as diverse as the gay community, as far as there's different things that attract different people to it for different reasons. And whatever you know is my thing may not necessarily be Monty's thing, may not be Tim's thing. So it's just you know, what is it about that keeps you coming back, and that's likely going to impact your actions, you know, in the long run.
Well, on that point, what would you all argue is unique to your generation's journey of gaining comparative to others?
So I would say again, I don't want to keep driving the point, but pre-internet. So we had, there's a Looney Tunes episode that a lot of people from our generation remember, about, you know, the dog with the gravy, you know, and then there was the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. And there's just, you know, there's several different things in popular culture that applied, you know, when you're in the gaming community, and you would seek those out if you could find the, you know, if you had the VHS or whatever it wasn't as easy just to go online. Not again, Monty, not saying that you've got it easy. That's definitely not what I'm trying to do. But it wasn't just as easy.
But
as
you guys
Googling
don't even
and finding it on YouTube and just being able to experience that.
I was gonna say, you guys don't even know what a VCR is.
We had to wait for it, you know, that kind of thing.
We had to put a blank tape in and tape the stuff that we thought was hot, and then we'd have to rewind it and watch it forward in slow motion and then rewind it again
and press that pause button and press it real quick again to move it one more frame.
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of just really helped my generation out. I mean, I remember getting like the first iPhone, and that's when I was, I was pretty young. I think I was like 11 or something. Let me preface. The only reason I had a phone at that age is because I was doing competitive skiing on the mountain and I had to ski back home. And so like my mom was just like, what if he gets lost in a ditch, you know? So that's the only reason I had that. And then I really don't remember like how I came across it. I do remember this like one specific episode on Goosebumps where it was like they had like this evil camera.
Oh,
and,
say cheese and die again.
Say cheese and die. And like one girl like got really, really skinny and the guy got like really, really fat. And I was just like, remember watching that? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I looked up on the internet because I was like stuffing, even before then I was like stuffing pillows in my shirt and stuff just to like make myself look bigger. Didn't know what I was doing at that time. I was just like, I'm a kid. So I looked up on the internet, which I think, you know, really helped my generation. That's why there's a lot of new younger gainers like my age who are coming into the limelight or just into the light in general. Yeah, we did, Eric, we did have the internet, you know, and it really helped us. But in other ways it didn't.
Well, and there's a lot of similarities in the story that you're just telling that, you know, we would see those things like you saw that movie, and we would see the thing, and I definitely did the same thing as a kid. I was putting pillows in my clothes and stuff, and I didn't like you, I didn't know what it was. The difference I think is that you found out about it sooner. And I had to wait a little while until I stumbled on Yahoo groups or something like that. But I think a lot of us have the same experiences. They just occur at different rates.
Yeah.
You know, different timetable on that.
And I mean, Gosh, I think I was like 12 when I watched my first like YouTube gainer video, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. But then I found the Pornhub link, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I like thinking back on that now, I was like, oh my God, I was 12 years old. Like,
Honey,
mm,
I was wanking at 12 years old, but it was to my
Imitate.
imagination.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we had like more just people doing it, and I think that just I think that just helped us out a lot to just be more comfortable and kind of go for what we wanted.
Speaking as the in-betweener, I suppose, with everyone here, I think something that defines the difference of weight gain in my generation is we were the generation where the obesity epidemic, quote unquote,
Mm.
came to the fore. So I think
Mm.
we were the first generation, and I think kids were always picked on for being fat, but I think my generation was the first one in the 90s where people started putting it on TV. The obesity epidemic affecting children, children obesity getting really out of hand. I can remember distinctly in high school, like the cafeteria where you would get burgers or chips or whatever you would get. I actually remember the week when we came in all expecting this, and they had gutted everything and put in those ugly salad bars, and they were like, yeah, guys, it's exciting because instead of having chocolate and chips, you can ask us to make you a wrap with chicken and avocado. Isn't that great? And I think
Which
students
every
actually,
12-year-old loves.
and I'm pretty sure some students like smashed in the Bain Marie, so I had to shut the cafeteria for a week while it got fixed. But like, I was in
And good on them. Good on them. Because even skinny me would have said, what the hell is this crap?
like, do you know what? I think the biggest enemy of like childhood James was Jamie Oliver, because he did that like school lunches special, and that's what caused the change. I remember being like 12 years old, like sharpening my kitchen knife to like a cleaver's edge, like I'm gonna get that Ponzi bitch for ruining potato wedges. Like I was so furious, but yeah, I think that's a defining factor of my generation. We were in the middle of that transition, of that experience from kids kind of being allowed to do whatever they wanted to kids being monitored.
Mhm.
And I think that's still happening
Being shamed.
today, but
Oh yeah.
a lot of shaming, a lot of shaming. Like I remember distinctly in high school, they introduced what they called the beep test, which is where you're in the gymnasium and you'd
Mm.
be playing this beep, beep, and then you had to start running to the other side of the auditorium. And you'd wait, and then they'd play another beep. And the beeps would get closer and closer together because the beeps get faster and faster. And the idea was to see what is your score? Like how many beeps can you survive before you get eliminated?
Mhm.
And I understand that like fitness tests are a part of like the American school system and things like that. And I suppose they have them everywhere, but it's something that I remember not being there one time, and then all of a sudden it's there, and it's a huge deal, and somehow everybody knows about it. Like, I think that is something that defines my generation, this introduction of an attempt at health. What really all it is it's people monitoring kids and making people feel like shit about themselves. I do want to challenge you guys on this. I want to hear from everyone, what is the thing, gaming wise, that you like most about other generations and what they do?
I'll go first. I really admire the Gen Z spirit. I really do. Even I do think that there are certain situations where they could dial the vitriol back a little bit, but I admire the passion and I admire wanting to go out there and do it, because I don't know if it's because people my age within or me and Eric's age within the community are like older and more established and we have more responsibilities. The desire to meet each other does not seem to be very strong among the millennials. It seems stronger among the Gen Z kids.
I think something that I greatly appreciate and admire is that Gen Z does want to meet up a lot, but also your guys's Tim and Eric, like, and also James, of course, you have all or your generations have made great strides in order to provide those meeting places for gainers. I really appreciate like the events and stuff like that. I obviously want to go to Grommr, just stuff like that, but also the way that you handle and present yourself in public. Like I still have like kind of a I don't know, just like a weird thing in the back of my mind where it's just like, yeah, I'm like super out and open on the internet, talking about like weight and like showing my body and stuff. But then like as soon as I go out into public, like the grocery store or anything like that, I'm just like sucking in my belly a little bit because I'm just like always thinking about what other people think. But when I look at y'all, you just don't care. Like, you're living your life, you're going to the bars, you're having dinner. And I greatly appreciate that, just the community efforts that y'all have made.
I mean, make no mistake, it was a long, hard road to get there.
Of course.
Yeah,
I almost imagine that the kind of distinction between, like, let's say the most three recent generations is like that kind of Gen X elder millennial idea was saying, we need a meeting space. The millennial idea was creating that meeting space, and the Zoomer ideal is going out in force into that meeting space. That's the kind of transitional difference I see between them. But, Monty, to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, I meet up with bear friends on a regular basis and try to post about it online because I want people to know that it's not about just gainers, it's about all bodies, and all bodies are valid. My approach to all bodies is to be a gainer to join in on that conversation. And I was having chats with a friend just today from America where it's like, they are not a gainer, they're a chub, they're a bear, and it's like, yeah, they know about gaining and it's chill. We talk about it. And when you own the conversational narrative of gaining, like, yeah, I'm a gainer and it's cool. Do you want to talk about it, or are you cool? And they're like, oh yeah, that's fine. People assume it's not fine because we dance around it. So when we own that shit, we take the power for ourselves. And honestly, I think that's the number one reason why society thinks poorly of like fetism, because no one's out here trying to correct it. Except us, obviously. But I think it's all of that. I think the thing I admire most is I'll actually hearken to, the older generations is looking for connection. Because the world has always been fat phobic. The world has always said to be fat is to be bad. So I admire the older generations for taking those first Neil Armstrong style steps out into the world, whether it was the internet or printed media with the Enquirer or Girth and Mirth. I admire that because men were saying, I'm willing to risk my personal finances, public ridicule if people find out my name is attached to this. I'm willing to risk it all on the off chance that there are other human beings out there who feel just like I do. So I admire that.
So Monty, it's funny that you said that you had the online that you're so confident in, and offline you have those insecurities, because my thing that I was going to say was I admire how confident a lot of the your generation's folks are. Like, you're just unapologetically yourself, and that's an admirable quality, and that's something I strive for. But it's funny to hear again the similarities that we all experience. I have that too. Like, I, sitting here in my house, I'm definitely comfortable in my skin and everything. I go out and in the world, and sometimes I do have that self-consciousness too. As much as you want to say, the older you get, the less you care what people think. That's not a 100%. You always have those doubts every now and then of, it always creeps in. So, but we're more alike than we are different, I think.
I want to ask you all now, what do you think other generations can learn from your generational experience? But I'll open this up, gaining, worldly, whatever the lesson is. What do you think other generations can learn from you?
I mentioned this a little bit like in my episode where, James, I think you posed the question, like, how do you interact with like an older person who contacts you online? And we got into the conversation about how, it's more so like, hey, sweetie, or like, hey, sexy, and stuff like that. I'm not saying that anybody here does that, of course, but I have had a multitude of like older gentlemen message me like that, and not everybody is like comfortable with that. So it's just like, treat people as a friend first, or getting to know them as a friend first. Don't go into anything like with sexual expectation. And I mean, that's just like advice for everybody, not just the older generation. That's the only thing I can kind of think of at the moment.
I think the millennial gainers could learn to be a little bit more passionate about the community from the Gen Z gainers. And I think the Gen Z gainers could learn to relax a little bit on certain things. Like, don't relax on your politics. We're totally fine with that because we need people that are driven when it comes to politics. But like when it comes to, and I'll say it, the cancel culture that has developed in the last several years, like dial it back a little bit, guys.
Oh,
Just dial it back. Like it's going to be okay. We will sort these things out. We don't have to immediately jump to cutting someone's head off the minute we don't like it, you know?
So what I'm hearing is, Tim, you're saying don't cancel you because you're old?
Yes, don't cancel me because
Okay,
I'm
cool.
old.
I just needed
It
to
takes us a
clarify.
while. Okay. Like I remember like very clearly, you know, like I've spoken on other episodes about how I didn't know a lot of trans people because they just didn't really hang out in the same bars. Like when I was like 20 to 28, they usually went to different bars. I didn't know any personally. I didn't know how to switch the pronouns before they came out of my mouth. I had to unlearn how to speak English. Essentially, I had to like insert pronouns where they didn't necessarily work grammatically, and that's hard to undo 30 plus years of schooling.
Oh yeah. Sorry, one thing that like Gen Z can learn from y'all, because I realized that I only said what you guys can learn. One thing that like my generation can definitely learn from both millennials and, you know, older millennials is you know, yeah, Gen Z, we like to be in the community, we like to step forth and like talk about it and stuff like that, but also we really need to work on clickiness. It is still prevalent. Excluding older people just because they're old is so stupid. Like I talk to James like almost every day, and compared to me, he's old as dirt. So, you know, and I still like him. That's it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's so much the younger generation or what, but what I was going to say was the segmentation, like just trying to divide the community up. I don't understand the purpose of it, and I don't know who's responsible for it. And you know that could be just a gay thing, but like I don't know, segmenting the community just seems sort of, it's such a small community anyway. Why are we going to do that?
Yeah.
I think that's something we come back to a lot of the time. You know, there's that question lingering in the air like a bad smell. Like, we're all outcasts for being gayness. Why are we trying to outcast in and amongst ourselves? And I do think that is just the human nature, the animal side of us of, this is my cave, these are my cave people. I've decided by virtue of whatever that you are not my cave people, therefore get out of my cave. But you know, the whole premise of us being evolved creatures is that we are meant to override our animal instincts sometimes. Like, the animal instinct to just fuck anything that moves. We managed to overcome that for the most part.
Did we?
Well, we gave a term to the non-consensual stuff. We called it rape, and said that's not great. So, you know, we made an effort with that. We didn't just start, like, eating food out of people's baskets. We created decorum and a process for things so that it was equitable and not bullshit. And we just need to keep doing that when it comes to clickiness and when it comes to, you know, my little square of the map, my little kingdom and all that. Does anyone have any final thoughts? Any points on intergenerational dynamics, especially as far as gaining is concerned? Do we feel like there's any points that we haven't really touched on or brought up at this stage?
I'm sorry. I was gonna say something else that I've really noticed, and this is not just in the gainer community, but in the gay community at large, that the conversation of consent was something that nobody ever brought up when I was young. Nobody ever asked me if I wanted to have my ass grabbed or my crotch grabbed or my nipples tweaked or any of the hands that found their way onto my body without my permission. And then I remember when the consent conversation started coming up, I'm like, well, where the fuck has this been? You know, why weren't we talking about this before?
Once again, the point I think comes through there. When people don't know, they don't know that they don't know. It's like, when you get critiqued for something, why don't you know this? Why is that a critique for me? Plain and simple is, I didn't know this. I can't be held responsible for the fact that I did not know. Now that you know, now you can be responsible. Now you can hold yourself accountable and hold others to account. But there is something to be said that during a certain time, things were what they were.
I think that like Tim, you were just like talking about like the coming of consent and stuff.
Mhm.
That I think that people need to also translate that to interactions on social media now. Because it's just like, yeah, you can be behind a screen, you don't have to be in person, but it still has to be a consensual conversation. Don't send people nudes right out of the bat. Ask if it's okay. If they ask for it, ask yourself if that's okay, so on and so forth. So that's my last point.
Yeah, I agree with all
Mm. What's the line? Same goes for me, double.
Yeah, me.
Ditto.
Me too.
Ditto.
Well, look, I think that's it for another episode here on Thicc Radio. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. Where can listeners find you online?
I have changed my name. So all of my Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Grommr are all now cub2001. So you can find me at, also my OnlyFans. Shameless plug.
I am Brave Heartland with a underscore in between each word, and I am on Grommr, and I'm an old guy, so that's it.
Well, we love that for you. We love our elder statesmen. We love our established icons. But that's a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BeefyFrat at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and BeefyFrat at Thicky Mouse. You can also look us up on TikTok at Thicc Radio or at our website at www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note, you can reach us at anchor.fm/Thicc Radio/message. And if you have any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stan and Thicky Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitsu.
Our theme song is provided by Body by Tree.